A little bit, yes.
So where did you learn to be tolerant or generous? What was your own instruction as you grew up? Maybe in kindergarten we were very tolerant or we didn't bother. But as you grow up, there is a certain difference that sets in where maybe the place where you grow in or the kind of ethos that surrounds you, you might not be as tolerant or as generous. I'm talking about both tolerance and generosity. And one of the things I have seen is people don't like to part with their money, you know, and the more money you have, the more reluctant they are unless it's really a crying need. So when I thought about tolerance and generosity when I was very young, we lived in a place where the parents, the families and the neighbors all had consistent thoughts on tolerance and generosity. And we never really reflected on the need to be tolerant. But when you grow up, and I went to school 50 plus years ago, so today's world where children are growing in, you find that there's more of a need to probably instruct them and expose them to these thoughts of tolerance and generosity. The gentleman I spoke to this morning, he said, I haven't really given it a thought. And he's got two young children, 1-year-old and 3-year-old. He's from Holland. And he said, and I really don't even know if I'm tolerant or generous. But when we had continued the conversation, he began to think about his brother who had become immobilized and he couldn't move and he had to be on a wheelchair, and then how he was talking about charity and things. His own concepts of tolerance and generosity came from his experiences. But what if children don't have those experiences in their lives? I feel we should influence the mind with positive thoughts of generosity and tolerance. And I've written quite frequently on Medium because even before I started thinking about using it in my schools, I felt that children didn't have a real idea of what tolerance is. And truly, if we look into ourselves and whether we're really open to be friends with everybody or respect each other or love each other in the same way as we do our own families or our friends, maybe we're not being really true to being tolerant. So if schools had an opportunity to awaken these thoughts, because if you look at it as you did when you were children, you were saying in the kindergarten, there's no caste, there's no color, they are happy, they're together, they don't discriminate. But as you grow older, you sort of get schooled into certain thoughts that arise from the people you interact with. Certain people, or certain communities, or certain thoughts are fed into children or adults. And the older you grow, the more discriminatory you become. Everybody's born here, everybody has a place, and we should teach it because this is the only way we will give them the resilience. So I'm going to show you a small video.
At any one moment, we're being bombarded by sensory information. Our brains do a remarkable job of making sense of it all. It seems easy enough to separate the sounds we hear from the sights we see. But there is one illusion that reveals this isn't always the case.
Ba, ba, ba.
Have a look at this. What do you hear?
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba.
But look what happens when we change the picture.
Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, ba. Ba.
And yet, the sound hasn't changed. In every clip, you are only ever hearing ba with a B.
Ba, ba.
It's an illusion known as the McGurk effect.
Ba,
Take another look.
ba,
Concentrate first on the right of the screen.
ba.
Now to the left of the screen.
Ba.
The illusion occurs because what you are seeing clashes with what you are hearing.
In the illusion, what we see overrides what we hear.
So the mouth movements we see as we look at a face can actually influence what we believe we're hearing. If we close our eyes, we actually hear the sound as it is. If we open our eyes, we actually see how the mouth movements can influence what we're hearing. Ba, ba, ba.
It's a bizarre effect. Remember, the only sound you're hearing is ba with a B.
Ba, 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 ba.
What's remarkable about this illusion is even knowing how it's done doesn't seem to make a difference.
Ba. The effect works no matter how much you know about the effect. I've been studying the McGurk effect for 25 years now, and I've been the face in the stimuli. I've seen stimuli thousands of times, but the effect still works on me. I can't help it. The speech brain just takes in that information and doesn't care about what outside knowledge you bring to bear.
And the reason why I showed you this clip is, if you close your eyes and listen to a cry of pain, regardless of who's crying, your immediate tendency is to help. But very often when we open our eyes and we see the context of, oh, well, that's not someone I know, or some beggar on the road, or it's somebody else, there's a reluctance to step forward to help that person, because when we open our eyes, the cry is associated with who is crying. But if you close your eyes, pain has only one cry. Need has only one kind of expression. But we don't respond to it equally. And that's because we are opening our eyes, and what we know about the world and about whom we help is colored by our experiences of the necessity to step up and help. So this is the reason where I felt tolerance and generosity, if it's brought into our schools, it will give children a better chance to learn about it. And the research says in Oregon University that there are centers in the brain that get activated when you're kind. When charitable generosity is practiced, it produces a good effect on the child. So I wanted to know, in your schools, what kind of opportunities exist at present to practice kindness or generosity. So if you could share some of the ideas, maybe we can all learn from each other.
We have something called Act of Kindness. We highlight the students maybe in recess time or during the periods if they are doing something nice. So if we say something like this, we highlight it and we tell this is an act of kindness. Maybe we support, we give them a star, badge or something like this. Just to
The teacher does that in the class?
And the kids are encouraged to report that. This we saw this A helping B and so on. So we started to encourage them to notice this and to do it as well.
That's good. Is there any other? Yes?
In my school, all the school children donated and they collected money to give to the orphanage. And
Orphanage?
Some gift also, yes.
Okay.
And even they give also donations.
Okay.
They give the donation also of blood.
So does that come from the children, or is that
Yes.
given by teachers, the ideas?
No. The money which is collected is given by the children
No,
themselves.
I'm saying, are children stepping up to be generous, or do you encourage them to?
We told them and they feel that they want to give.
They want to give. Yeah. You know, that itself. How do children feel about it when they're generous, or when you give them a star or you encourage them? What's the kind of feeling that you get? When we give, we're happier than when we receive. We feel so good in having helped somebody. And whether it's adults or children, when someone recognizes you and says, that's a wonderful job you've done, we're very reluctant even with words of praise as teachers. There's more we can do with words, and generosity is not just about giving money. It's a great thing, but we can be generous with our time. We can be generous with a smile. I have to willingly smile at you. I can withhold that smile, okay? You can be willingly pointing out something that would make someone else happy. And it's a conscious effort when you say, oh, well done, A, and you did well, and then that encourages B to do it because he also wants to be praised. So teachers have opportunity every single minute, and Actually, every adult has. It's a choice we make to be generous. But if we define generosity as money, but if you really want to be exercising a generosity of spirit, then you can do it all the time. When you're grumpy with somebody, you just don't want to be happy. You just want to make them miserable, but you know whom to smile at. You know whom to be nice to. You know how to say kind things. And everyone responds beautifully to praise, and in that should be the fuel that drives the learning in our environment. Then everybody could do with a lot of praise. And words have greater impact than we know. But in some ways, we're very, very reluctant to use them. Though we have the facility of language, we withhold more often than give. And we give the kind of words that really don't produce the results that we want. So if we consciously choose to make children even understand, yeah, helping Ma put some clothes in the laundry basket, and if nothing, just smiling at somebody, wishing them good morning, is being conscious that you're mindful that you have to be generous. Because everything we give, so we had this fill your bucket, and here's a child who's written, I'm thankful to Sapna ma'am because teaching me, I'm thankful to my parents because taking care of me, I'm thankful to my cousin sister for talking to me. These are all done by some kindergarten children, but they're able to appreciate that talking to me, she was generous enough to talk to me. Where are the opportunities to teach generosity in your school, in your curriculum? Do you have anything that allows you to teach generosity?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
We started already.
One of the children had lost their dad, and the children decided they were going to pay off the fees of that one child for that year. So they got together, they ran a few entrepreneurial activities, bake sales, but every month they'd make sure that our fees are very low. It's about 700 dirhams a month. Okay, so children are able to raise that amount through their own activities, but their responsibility they show in being generous first within their own community, for their own children, not only helping labor camps and people outside. They're trying to be learning generosity in their immediate circumstances. So this is something that we should try and promote. Now, Dubai Cares is an organization where every year we participate in what is called Walk for Education. I'm just citing this example because it has become a calendared event in our school. And when you make something happen every single year with consistency, there's a value placed on it, which children and the staff and the parents realize it's important to walk for education. So we're giving to charity, we're taking a nice walk with Dubai Cares people in the morning, and children are understanding that through their donations, they're able to change the lives of other people all around the world. Is there any calendared activity in your school which you would say, we've earmarked this so that it becomes a habit?
Yeah, for us we have every year. Our children will go for a visit to that house for old people.
Old age home,
Yes.
yes. Okay.
They give also, they take their own gift, they bring their own gift and take a gift to these old people
Old people, yes.
every year.
Is there anyone else? Is there anything happening at the moment where you feel there's something happening every year or every week or every month which becomes like a habit? What I'm trying to say is if you do it once, it's done and you're very generous and it's written about and everyone's happy. But it is the consistency with which you do that it becomes habitual. That, people begin to realize giving is not just a single instance. It's again and again and again. And sometimes when you have to give, you feel there's so much going, what am I getting from it? Most often when people give anything, they expect things in return. So when you teach children to give to those who cannot give anything back to you, but believing that some good will return. Your job is just as a conduit, carrying something and flowing, carrying whatever comes with you to a certain extent. You don't ask where it comes from, and you don't know where it goes when you die. Okay? So your job is to just make sure that as long as you live on earth, you live a life of giving. You give a life of giving, and you get from somewhere. You know, and very often when you're in really difficult circumstances, really down and out, there's someone helping you, someone reaching out. We all need that help. And when we look at our lives, you may have lost a job, you may have lost your money, you may have, really a family member, an employer who reaches out and helps. And sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. Generosity comes from the most unexpected places. When we think someone will help us, when we are in need, we should be able to help when we're not in need. We should be able to help everybody every day. And actually, just by being positive and helping and being kind, there's so much of positivity that flows around us. And the ethos in which you work, your own amongst your colleagues, in your school, in your classrooms, becomes really vibrant when we consciously try to be tolerant and generous. So I put together some volunteering opportunities which are available in Dubai, because some people say, well, we want to do something, but we don't know where to or whom to help. So there's something called Adopt a Camp, where you can adopt a labor camp and look after their needs and whatever. You have a longer association with them, give them, gifts during Ramadan or during some festival time, or give them warm clothes during the winter. There's something called Aid in Motion, which actually allows you to donate old clothes. They'll come and collect the clothes and they'll deliver it to different places in Dubai where people are in need. There's the Dubai Animal Rescue Center. There is Al Noor Center for Special Needs, where people can volunteer to work with children with special needs. So there you're learning about tolerance, inclusion, as well as volunteering your time to look after people who are not as fortunate as you are. There's a Hair for Hope project, the Make-A-Wish Foundation, all to do with cancer. You can donate your hair, or you can help a child who's suffering from cancer. And there's Volunteer in Dubai, which is very helpful for little older students who can go out and volunteer. So these are all opportunities which exist. And what we do is, around our school, wherever there's a construction site, so these are my children giving something to the laborers, but the school is facilitating it by creating the platform which will enable children to exercise generosity. So if we look around, there are plenty of opportunities which we have to be generous. And sometimes we need to just seek it out. If you consciously develop a mindset saying, I'm going to be generous, I'm going to be kind, I'm going to be tolerant, opportunities exist the entire day, all the time. So to those who find it difficult, every year there is calamities that happen. There's war in the Middle East region. There is natural calamities like earthquakes and typhoons, and all the time this came in the papers. In Syria, I think this was a campaign to give blankets to people in Syria during the war time. As an educator, as a principal of a school, I constantly look to see I should be placing that in front of the children and saying, here are children in Syria, it's so cold, it's snowing, and they don't have anything to wear and they don't have blankets. Not only do the children bring these items, they are made to pack them themselves, giving them, ownership of what they're doing and wanting to be active participants. So every time, there's always something going on in the world. There's the Rohingya refugees, there is we had a typhoon, Haiyan, there's so many things. And UAE is so proactive and positive in its philanthropy. Its ruler encourages it, and constantly we have campaigns either through Red Crescent or through Dubai Cares or some other Al Jalila Foundation seeking to help people in need. And these are opportunities where children and the staff and people there must realize it won't happen just once. Once is not enough. It must be again and again, and perhaps it must hurt to give for you to really realize what is giving. I've given 10 cartons of blankets, and we feel so proud and so joyful of having done that. But when you think of the number of people in need around the world, the number of people who don't have a roof over their heads, food to eat, and when calamity strikes the nation, the resilience develops when people and nations like UAE rally around them and make sure that help is provided. So look out, if you haven't already been doing, for natural disasters, things that are happening, making children aware of what is going on around the world, and looking, not only can you impact your own community, but you can impact the wider global community. So when children said they wanted to, help some children in Africa because they were walking to carry water, we actually made them do this exercise. We said, carry a bucket of water and walk around the school quadrangle and don't drop a single drop. So we filled it up as much as we could, and initially they thought it was fun and they were carrying it, but after a little while, they began to realize it's a hard time, and I said they don't have shoes on their feet, they're walking over rough terrain. So just by getting them to experience something, children begin to relate and empathize and realize how fortunate they are, and then they're more willing to give what they have. This is a project the school undertook because I think if we try to teach tolerance and generosity as standalone or add-ons, they don't really become embedded in the curriculum. So for 6 months, the children chose Malawi, one of the poorest regions in Africa, and they said, they were learning about shelter and community, and they said they don't have schools there. So what can we do? Can we build schools? And once they decided they were trying to build a school, they've raised enough money over a period of 6 months through various activities, and now they have handed over that money to an organization which is going to build a 2-room school in Malawi with separate latrines, toilets for girls and boys. And I'm taking the children in March to Malawi, a few of them. I run a primary school, so I don't have older children. So grade 5s are going to accompany us to Malawi to experience that they can change the world, to actually see that having constructed even a 2-room school, they can change education for so many children. And this was there right from kindergarten through 5. So the kindergartners learned about, how they ask questions like, why can't mom and dad go and work? Why can't they just go and work, and why can't daddy bring money, and why can't they go to school? And why don't they have a school? So when they began to look at things like, I said, why don't you sit outside? It's very, very hot in Dubai. You can't sit outside. So they began to look at whether, so it was built into their curriculum, so they learned science, and they learned social studies, and they learned English, all through learning about Malawi. And they researched where is Malawi. They learned about its flag and the distance from Malawi, and what kind of transportation goes. So everything was woven like a project for 6 months, and it enabled them, teachers, to bring Malawi to the table every single time. But I'm sure there'd be great ideas in schools all around, because teachers always complain about time to me. They say, where's the time to teach? We can't cover our syllabus. There's so much to teach. Where's the time to teach about Malawi? But when we mapped our curriculum and we said, you teach shelter and community, you teach transportation, mapping your curriculum around it so that it gives more opportunity for children. If something is an add-on in your curriculum, you can't transact it well because it is in addition to what you do. But if you integrate it and it becomes a part of what you're teaching every day, there's plenty of opportunity to teach both tolerance and generosity as well as everything else that you have to as a teacher in your school.
Ma'am,
Yes.
yeah, we have taught tolerance and generosity and benevolence also in our school. And now we're trying to make cross curriculum in all the subjects, even Arabic, including Arabic.
Definitely. And if you celebrate their thoughts and actions, so very often after a project is done, we hold an exhibition. Like in our kindergarten, we follow a Reggio-inspired approach. So Reggio approach gives them a lot of documentation, so they are able to display what they've made and then talk about it. So even if through the Reggio approach, they spoke about Malawi and how they've constructed houses and what they did. The story of Malawi written, we put together what children actually did in school for a kindergarten. So holding exhibitions, it's not enough if the school knows. The parents should know, the wider community should know what your children are doing to promote tolerance and generosity.
How did you come to the decision of Malawi? How did you?
Some of them can relate in relation to our home country of India, where you see beggars on the road, you see homeless people, you see people without food. So they were looking at, are there places where there are really poor people? Because we were doing shelter and community, and we were talking about how harsh the weather is, and we're all in air-conditioned comfort. What if we didn't have? And when they started the research, they found out, let's find one of the poorest places that we could. There were many places, but when children came across African children and pictures of them with, no food, which will enable teachers who find it difficult to actually integrate kindness into the lessons. So every time somebody comes to me saying it can't be done, I as a principal go looking for ways that I can help them to do it. Because when you find a solution, they might still find something else that doesn't work. Then we try to find together some ways it can be done. That doesn't mean that every single day we are only teaching kindness and generosity or tolerance. But we utilize whatever time we get and whatever occasion we get to remind ourselves, well, we can be kind, we can be generous. There may be something that happens in the school or in the neighborhood or around the country or in another part of the world, which gives us occasion to make use of that. So as educators in different schools, you should search for those things. If you don't give children the platform, how can they do it? But the children were resilient. They said, when are we doing this again? When are we going to try? Many parents ask me, what did they learn from there? And I said, all learning doesn't happen in the four walls of the classroom. They learned progress. Every single day they became better. They learned responsibility to stand in one spot and to flip the cards when it was said 1, 2, 3. Okay? They learned independence. We couldn't go stand with them. They had to stand in their own places. They learned to create the largest collaborative picture. And we're trying to teach collaboration in classes. The very same skills that you are trying to teach can occur anywhere if you choose to make it happen. And so I heard, aren't you disappointed? Isn't it so sad? And the greatest learning for me as a principal is children must meet with failure, must meet with disappointment, must know that every time you cannot win, that the poor exist, that the people who are discriminated live. We have to expose them to the real world and not just the world as we want them to believe is there. So the earlier they come into the understanding, whether it is meeting failure with dignity or whether it's understanding there are really poor people whom we can help, they don't realize that everybody's like me. Children in our schools don't know many of the things that exist in the real world. Dubai is so manicured, it's so beautiful, its streets are so well laid out, it has fantastic buildings, that children do not know the reality from where things exist. So one of the things that you can do is to go and visit the site. It has plenty of opportunity for you to embed things like this. 6 years we kept donating, we kept doing things. One day I was called by Dubai Cares people, and I went with 4 or 5 children, and we didn't know His Highness was there, but we were the only educational institution to be recognized by His Highness for philanthropy. 18 years ago when I came to Dubai, I never thought I would meet His Highness, let alone shake his hand. But it was a very proud moment for me, because it was, I'm passionate about teaching tolerance and generosity. Here is a ruler who embodies tolerance and generosity, who allows so many different communities and cultures to live peacefully in this place. And that's something that we take for granted. There are many countries where this doesn't happen. And like His Highness Sheikh Zayed says, to treat every person, no matter what his creed or race, as a special soul is a mark of Islam. And I think it's a mark of every religion, the religion of humanity, to treat everybody as somebody special. So I would like you to carry that to your schools. And I think you can start exercising everything right from now. Just being more mindful of the present, smiling at people, acknowledging people. We say we are tolerant, but we walk right past people. We stand in elevators and we don't even greet each other. So if we take that exercise into our schools, I think there's so much that we can learn. So that you have a little exercise. After this, you've got to fill in your feedback. If you can visit this on your phones and put in your feedback, then KHDA would get some feedback from you, if you can access the site.
And I have more exercise.
Yeah.
I won't take photo with you.
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
This is a certificate from KHDA.
Thank you so
And
much.
this is a book for Sheikh Zayed, and this is the heritage book that
Thank you so much. Thank you.